Welcome to Are We the Only Ones? I'm Kathy, and today I am at the SeaTac Airport. I'm on a layover from Disney World. I'm on my way home to California, and I figured I would try to podcast from here. I don't know if there's a lot of background noise, but we'll see what happens. So what I want to talk about is travel etiquette. I just got on a flight from Orlando to SeaTac, so it's Seattle, and I was in the first row behind first class in comfort on Delta. What happened when I boarded the plane was that there were two guys seated in the aisle and then in the middle seat, and my seat was 10F, which is by the window. These guys were pretty big guys, and they had carry-ons that were backpacks that were protruding out from the front seat where they were stowing their bag, which meant that I could not find anywhere to step if they didn't get up and move out of the row so I could get in, which they did not. So I had to climb over these two guys and literally throw my bag over to the seat and then basically fall into the seat to be able to get into my seat. Now, the polite way, the internationally expected and accepted way, is to get up, get out of the way, and let the passenger in. I thought if one of them stood up, then the other would stand up, but neither of them stood up. So then I had to jump over them, basically. And then, whenever I went to the bathroom, I had to do the same thing. They would not get up to let me out. I had to climb over them, and I climbed back in. And I just thought that was so funny, because I lived in Japan for 3 years, and when you live in Japan, there's a lot of polite behavior there. Japan is very, the concept of their culture is that you don't do anything that would be in somebody else's personal space, making other people uncomfortable. So every train, every plane is silent, including little kids. They're just quiet. And that's a lot different than on here. So behind me, to add insult to injury, there was a man behind me that was very, very large. And I don't really care if you're large. That's not the issue. But what bothered me with him was that he had clearly not brushed his teeth and not showered, because he reeked. He smelled like sour. It's like a sour BO smell that was coming from behind me the entire flight. I was on a 6-hour flight. So that's a long time to have to endure smelling somebody that you don't know and you don't like. So my takeaway is like, every time anybody travels, we have to get culturally understanding that you have got to shower. You have got to brush your teeth if you're going to be around other people. Because it's disgusting. It's just gross. The guy behind me kept pushing onto the back of my chair. And so every time he did that, I reclined my seat just a little bit. And then just to let him know, like, I'm sitting here. You can't just, like, kick my seat with your knee or whatever. And so I ended up reclining quite a bit. I finally just reclined, and he would, like, try to push against it. And I was like, no, dude, this is my seat. I don't know what. I think he was, like, sleeping on his. What he should have been doing was leaning back on his chair and not leaning up on me. And also, every time he'd get up, he would, like, grab my chair to get up, which I think is also very rude. People, please recognize that when you're getting up from an airplane seat, if you grab the chair in front of you, you're pulling the seat down with the person sitting in front of you. That's not cool. Use your armrest to stand up. I had to grab the seat because these guys wouldn't freaking get up for me. But you could understand how that would be extremely rude. And then I put up, so there's a crying baby in first class, which is right in front of us. I didn't really care about the crying baby. It happens, whatever, no big deal. But then I figured, well, I'm not going to sleep on this flight because it smells and there's a crying baby. So I'm going to look out my window seat. So I pulled up the shade because I paid for a window seat. I selected a window seat. Why not open the window? And I can tell you honestly, if those guys had gotten up and let me in and out properly, they didn't have to get out of the road. They could at least stand up. But if you can't, just make something, you got to get out of the road. I decided that if they weren't going to be considerate of me, that I would do whatever I wanted to be comfortable. So I put the window shade up. I had my phone out. I was watching Taylor Swift's documentary. And then I had my monitor out so I could see the flight path because I really needed to know how long I was going to be on that plane. And the funny thing was, neither of these guys could figure out. They were like, two basically based on the way that they were behaving, and all three of these guys was of a different race. So it was not like, it's a mixed bag of just young. They were just young, I think 20s or 30s. So I think there's something about like young 20, 30-year-old men. I mean, that's not really that young, but like that just don't get taught right and don't know how to like behave in public. I mean, the fact that there's no hygiene going on, all three of those guys had not showered. But the one behind me definitely hadn't brushed his teeth. And then when I went to the bathroom the second time, I came back. My window was open. It was up. My shade was pulled, not all the way up, but like halfway up. I come back to my seat, and somebody had pulled my shade down all the way to make it dark. Now, I'm sure they were trying to hint to me the way they would like to sleep. Well, I would like to hint to them that I would like to walk into the row and out of the row without having to climb over two people and fall into my chair. And I'm a small person, so I can fit usually in and out, no problem. These guys were huge. And not like ridiculously huge, but big enough that there's absolutely no way that there was any space, and they had to get up to get out to let me out, or in and out, or else otherwise it's the situation. Maybe the first time I would understand, but after the second and third time, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So then I basically was like, hold on, this is my seat. You cannot, I didn't say anything to anybody. I just thought about like, that is such an invasion of my space and my seat because of the fact that they had no consideration for me. So I was like, absolutely not. I sat down and I opened the shade this time all the way up, and I left it all the way up the whole time because consideration goes both ways. So you're not going to expect me to be considerate of you while you're blatantly not being considerate of me. Absolutely not. I'm not getting bullied by men that have no manners. I am not going to engage in anything aggressive or assertive. I wasn't engaging at all. But discreetly and with dignity, I stood up for myself, right? So I had a comfortable flight for me based on how uncomfortable they're making me. I made it as comfortable for myself as I could. And then we were on approach. The guy behind me starts whistling the entire on approach, which is like 15 minutes. I mean, usually on approach is like 30 minutes, but I think it was like 15 minutes, and he was just whistling the whole time with his stinky, sour breath. And I'm sitting there going, this guy's killing me. So then I put my headphones in, and it's fine, but it's like, knowing that guy when he was sleeping, he was snoring so bad that there are people in first class turning around and just being like, you gotta be kidding me, like audibly, like, you got to be kidding me. And so I think it's important that, as we see like the Japanese players from the Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto, and we're looking up to Japanese people, Japanese culture, I would also like to impart on you that Japanese culture also includes being extremely aware of your surroundings and being extremely polite and cleaning up after yourself and not leaving a mess and doing all those things. Like, we love how they cleaned up the World Cup soccer stadium, but no other cultures decided to start cleaning up. Similar to them, even though they modeled a good behavior. And here's what's interesting. When I go to Vietnam now, the service culture in Vietnam for hotels is Japanese now. How do I know this? Because, one, I used to live in Japan for 3 years. Two, I worked at Uniqlo in New York, and so I learned the Japanese way of doing retail. And then, I went to Vietnam, and I got to see that the Vietnamese decided to start changing because Vietnamese don't have like a service culture the same way that, they're working through it. But because the Japanese came and lived there and are literally I went to a little area of Saigon that was 6 streets, and it was all Japanese. They were speaking Japanese. It looked like Japan. I felt like I was in Japan. I was speaking Japanese to a Vietnamese server who could speak both Vietnamese and Japanese. I was speaking both languages with her. And I was like, what's happening here? Why is there like Japanese culture infiltrating in all the hotels? Like, we're talking not just in Saigon. It was in Hue and Dalat. Everybody was acting like Japanese culture, the way they were doing it. And Japanese culture meaning like when they stand with their left hand over their right. Their feet will be out like this. When they point with their hand open, so it's not rude. And always like the way you expect it to be. polite, quiet, done properly. And I kind of sense that as Japanese tourism starts to increase from America, I already see some things happening. Like at Mount Fuji, there's a family member, people were taking pictures or something, and they were doing something very offensive. And so they had to put a fence up. Like they have to now do things to like, almost like create boundaries so that foreigners won't act out. But what they really need to do is do like a video so that when you fly into the country, you're getting debriefed on what the culture is and like tipping culture. You hate taking your shoes off where you go and things like that. But it was something I realized we should do in our planes too, because we would be like, hey, please remember to brush your teeth. If you haven't brushed your teeth, you have toothbrushes on board. That would be helpful. So that won't smell in your neighbors. Or, you know what you should do is when you check in for your flight the day before, there should be email that reminds everybody to shower, to brush their teeth, to, I don't know, keep your shoes on so that you don't have stinky feet. Because I've been on a flight before. I remember I was on a flight going to Ireland on Aer Lingus, and this guy took his shoes off and it reeked. And I had to tell the flight attendant to tell the guy behind me to put his shoes back on because it was horrendous. And so I think that it's interesting to me. It's usually men that act like this. But you could imagine being flanked by all dirty, smelly, large, very rude men. And how, you know, I'm 4'11", 107 pounds. If a man wants to bully me, he can. But make no mistake, I'm not the one. I will never engage in something that would escalate to a security situation. But I am not going to let you bully me in this space, especially if I paid for a plane ticket. Everybody has a seat. That is their space. But you must let people in and out of that space. They shouldn't have to climb and physically have to touch you or fall into their chairs. So that was something that I recognized. And then, here's another thing. I go to the airport. I have an hour and 46 minutes over. So Seattle's a great airport, great food here. So I decided to get food. I was going to go over to one of those counters where it's like a higher, like where like a single can sit and have plugs. So I could plug in my computer and stuff. There's a family that was there. And they had taken up, it was a family of 4, but they had taken up the entire thing. Had basically cost all the chairs. So even if I wanted to sit down, I couldn't because they had gathered the chairs so that all their stuff was around the chairs, even though they weren't using it. They're all standing, nobody was sitting down. And they even had a dog. And they're sitting there feeding the dog. Dog's like on a leash, which is fine. Dogs are all here. But it was like they were completely sprawled out, had taken all the space, just messy, just doing everything, just had no regard that, like, you basically turn this into your living room. So I thought that was interesting too, because I think manners have gotten worse and worse and worse through the years. And I think maybe because we're doing so much stuff on our phones and online, maybe we're not used to being with people and we don't maybe know what manners are. So I think what would be interesting is to start talking about like etiquette and then just sending those clips out. Hopefully those clips go viral so that people learn how to be polite when they're in public spaces. Because I think that if everybody was more polite, and everybody treated everybody with more respect and consideration, all of this shit we're going through right now, with all these freaking crazy political bullying, it would be harder to be able to get to where we are now if everybody was considerate all the time, if everybody was always thinking about how to make it pleasant for everyone versus how to get my space, even if I have to invade into my space. Something to think about. Tell me what you think. Have you experienced this kind of thing before? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have tips and pointers? What are things that you would like to see? Okay. Give me a like, follow, subscribe on Substack or YouTube and Instagram, TikTok. At Are We the Only Ones Pod? And on TikTok would be Are We the Only Ones Podcast. Until next time.